Lee Peoples,
Here.
Anthony Black, Jorge Charnico,
Here.
Matt Guillory,
Here.
Tyler Holmes, Sarah Miller, Toon Nguyen,
Here.
Marcus Uday,
Here.
James Barnum. You have a quorum.
Thank you. We have a couple of announcements. Commissioner Guillory will be leaving at 3:45. Commissioner Charnico on item 5A has communicated that he will be recusing on that item, but so we will maintain a quorum. He will stay on the horseshoe but will not participate. The next item would be the approval of the minutes of the August 28th, 2019 meeting. Do we have any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval?
I motion.
We have a motion by Nguyen, second by Guillory. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We have no cases withdrawn. We have no continuance requests. And so we will move on to item 5A, the consent docket. Would staff like to give us some information on this item?
This is an item to add a new mural to the east side of the building at 1732 Northwest 16th, Oak and Ore Restaurant. The proposal is to add it as a new feature to the Plaza Walls art mural project. It would be part of that curatorial program. And we've reviewed it against our rules and regulations and determined it's compliant with all the design guidelines and development regulations, and therefore place it on the consent docket for the Commission's consideration.
Do any commissioners have any questions or want to request individual consideration of this item? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent docket?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
We have a motion by Guillory. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Nguyen. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we will show one abstention on the record for Commissioner Charnico. So that item is approved. We'll now move on to 6A, cases for individual consideration, UDCA 19-19. Staff could give us a report on this.
Okay, this item is a proposal to demolish the existing building at 4913 North Lincoln Boulevard. It's on the west side of North Lincoln, just south of Northeast 50th Street. There's an existing building there. It's been there since, I believe it was around 1950, and it was built and used for quite some time as a child care center. At this time, the building is presently vacant, and the applicant is proposing to demolish the building and replace it with a new building, basically around the same size building footprint. But instead of being on the north side of the property, the project would be on the south side of the property, abutting the playground for the Dove Science Academy. A couple things to go over. One is the demolition request, and in the staff report we've highlighted our analysis of the reasons we feel that it's acceptable for the Commission to support the demolition of the structure. And then secondarily, the applicant's new proposed building is a single-story structure, and in the new Lincoln Boulevard Corridor Urban Design overlay, the minimum building height is 2 stories, 35 feet. The applicant has explained to us his rationale for proposing a single-story building. We've provided to the commission our analysis of the reasons why it might make sense to support a variance to allow a single-story building rather than requiring the 2-story building. And in addition to that, this is one of the first projects we've had come in under the new overlay, and because the project is satisfying all the other standards that were established through the establishment of the overlay district, including the parking lot location and screening, as well as the transparency level on the front facade of the building facing Lincoln Boulevard. For those reasons and others outlined in the staff report, we're supporting the request for the variance on the minimum building height. And therefore, we're recommending approval of the project to the commission. That completes our presentation. We're prepared to respond to any questions that the commission may have. Why is this not working?
Any questions for staff? Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Would you like to speak to your application? Please give us your name and address and sign in.
Michael Navard, 2209 Northwest 57th Street. As you can tell, we have a fairly old building that we believe is in its best use needs to be torn down and put back into something more contemporary and modern. It's a very small site. We're left with not a lot to work with, as the original development of that site was actually one large site for 3 buildings that were subsequently split into much smaller lots. And so we're left with what was once a cross-access project is limited very severely. You'll see the back west side of our lot is actually 10 feet into the Dovis Academy parking lot, which happens to be 10 feet above us. So we even lose another 1,000 feet of usable space. So we continue to get smaller and smaller usable footprint for both a building, which is designed to be a duplex structure, not a single-use occupant. We have a small user nonprofit agency that we have planned for the front half. So leaving us with a very small structure up on the second floor would be not, great use of design metrics and, functional use of stairwell and as it accounts to the parking lot, et cetera. So, we asked the commission, and we appreciate staff's help through this process, given that it's our first time as well working through this. But we believe we have put together a pretty efficient plan for approval. We would ask that you do that.
Any questions for the applicant?
Excuse me, it's sometimes hard without a rendering to kind of visualize the property. This is going to be brick clad, correct?
Yes.
What color brick? What's the general appearance that you're going for?
It'll be just solid red brick, gray, mortar, like gray mortar, clear anodized windows, doors, et cetera.
Okay.
Dark roof, matching clear anodized type of guttering system. Beyond that, it's
Okay.
Landscaping. It's pretty straightforward. Loblollies, evergreens, and then concrete parking lot.
And
No.
notice a signage on the front of the building attached to it. Are you planning to do any signage along Lincoln or along any of the streets?
There's no planned monument signage at this time. Talked to Mr. Philbrick, and he recommended, when the time comes, if we need to submit, we'll resubmit for a monument.
I see there's a sign, a space where the sign would be on the rendering here, and I assume that staff has advised the applicant on any restrictions, and as long as the sign fits in that box, it's okay.
The size that's shown on the elevation, on the north elevation, is consistent with the size that's allowed. When the applicant doesn't have the design or the name of the tenant ready, we are able and often do apply what we call, or approve what we call sign blanks at a certain size. And when they come in later for the permit, if the sign is that size or less, we don't make them come back through another CA for the sign. If the sign happened to come in bigger, then they would have to go through a revision to that.
Any other questions from the commission? Are there any members of the public here that would like to speak to this item? Any discussion among the commission on this? If we do choose to take action, or when we take action, I'll remind commissioners this is a two-part item here with two motions. The first would be to approve or deny, and then the second would be to recommend or not to recommend to the Board of Adjustment for a variance. And in your staff report, you have some recommended language there toward the back of the report.
I'll go ahead and put forward a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Urban Design Overlay District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant shall obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the minimum building height requirement.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Charnico. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Nguyen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have our recommendation on that item. We would now entertain a recommendation on approval to the Board of Adjustment.
I would like to put forward a motion to provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the minimum building height requirement.
We have a motion by Commissioner Charnico. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Nguyen. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, you are approved, and you have your recommendation to the Board of Adjustment. That concludes our cases for individual consideration. We have a couple items under other business today. Item 7A, the Downtown Development Framework. I understand staff will be presenting some updates on that.
Lisa Chronister, Planning Department. I'm presenting this update on the Downtown Development Framework. What is the Downtown Development Framework? It's an adopted plan. It was adopted in 2015 by City Council, Planning Commission, and all of the design review districts that it affects. It's a policy document and a resource guide. So it's a guide to investment. It sets expectations. In design review, we use it as supplemental guidelines for facades and streetscapes. It's used by the city to prioritize capital improvements. It's used in evaluating TIF districts. And one reason we refer to it in design review is because it provides more specificity about window transparency and sidewalk dimensions than the ordinance does. So the components are the development framework. That's where there are development typology maps, transportation, everything about streets, pedestrians, automobiles, transit, parking, bicycles. Then the design framework, which is what we use most often, it talks about street design, again, massing, character, lot coverage, and building frontage. So why this update? So the original was approved in 2015. The intent was always that it would be updated every couple of years. So here we are 4 years later. Most of what we've done has been correcting typos, adding street names, making it more user-friendly. That's the bulk of what we did on just about every page in the document. And the pages that were changed have a call-out box noting what changes were made on that page. But some more major changes we made were to update the development typologies map. I'll go through all these in more detail here in a minute. We deleted the future development plan and guide and the building typology matrix. We established a new page showing streetcar and park frontage priority areas, and we updated a few of the street typologies on the map. So updated certain typologies. I have the cottage district boundaries shown in a dashed line here. So the cottage district is the only area that Urban Design Commission reviews that uses the downtown development framework. All the other areas are not covered by this document. So you can see there were no changes to development typologies within the cottage district. Most of the changes on this map were related to things like, in 2015, it's hard to remember, the convention center site was not defined at that moment. So we've updated where the convention center is. We've updated the park and how, especially the lower park, and how it has been developed. We made sure that all of the city parks were shown accurately. Another major change on this map was to identify Automobile Alley and Bricktown as the same development typology. It's now designated purple for a special district historic area, because both of those districts derive their form and character from the historic nature of the large brick warehouse type buildings. We deleted the building typology compatibility matrix. I don't remember that this has come up on projects in this commission, but what this was trying to do was to show that certain types of development were compatible or partially compatible with other types. And what made that difficult to interpret was, what's the definition of partially compatible? Then we believe, like all of the design review regulations and guidelines, they're all working together to achieve compatibility. And that could be done through materials, it could be done through massing. If all of those other criteria are taking care of compatibility, then we don't need to try to assess it in another matrix. It's just very difficult to interpret, so we propose to get rid of it. Similarly, no other page in the DDF has caused more disagreement and consternation than the future development plan. Every time we would reference it, there's a question, well, is this based on market? Is this aspirational? Is it trying to catalog what's on the ground now? Are we supposed to be updating it to keep pace with development? All of those questions. I mean, the big picture of what it was trying to show was that we have a dense core in the central business district, followed by varying levels of density as we move outward from the central business district. But we don't need too many people were reading the plan as a directive to develop this type of thing in this block. So we're getting rid of this page. That should make the whole document a lot more clear. There was also an accompanying matrix that had some information about building densities and types of uses. Where we thought it was important to keep that information, we have put it into the paragraphs on the individual typology pages that describe the districts. I'll show you that in a minute. So deleting that, here's where we have incorporated important density and massing information. We've rewritten some of the paragraphs. So again, you can see there's been no change. So these are going away. Then streetcar and park frontage priority areas. This is something that has come up on several commissions. It was a specific request of the Alliance for Economic Development that with all this just massive public investment on the streetcar and on the parks, that buildings fronting those two things needed to have a lot of massing, a lot of transparency. They needed to not be fronted by parking garages because these need to be just the most high quality, high caliber streets. So it's consistent. If you are a park, you can see Red Andrews' idea. If you are a park, this frontage priority applies to you. Updated certain street typology. There were no changes in cottage area on this map. The main changes were over here next to Deep Deuce, and then we integrated things like an accurate representation of important building sites and the new park. So we have presented this to all of the design review commissions. The last one, Bricktown had several questions that I will need to reappear to them to address. And we did present this to Planning Commission at a study session earlier this summer. And so we'll go through back to Bricktown. We'll go back to through Planning Commission formal meetings before it is adopted by City Council. So with that, I'll answer any questions. I went through it quickly. I'm happy to back up to any page.
I had a question for you. Toward the end, there's a character sub-district descriptions where they have a description, character elements.
Yes.
How would you envision that being used? Would it be referred to by staff in staff reports? Would it be used as we are coming upon the revision of the municipal code? Can Could you give me some examples of how that language is intended to be used?
Sure, it should be used by the zoning code consultant. They do have a copy of the original and of this draft. The paragraph set kind of bold vision statements of what defines the area, and those should be picked up in nuances to the design guidelines for all those areas. And we did make some changes to the cottage district paragraph. It's on page 63 if you haven't found it.
Any additional questions for staff?
Yeah, and Lee, to your point, the larger picture of that section is to show, downtown is a physically big area, and so many different areas of it are distinct. They're purposefully not the same, and we don't want to encourage that they become the same. We want to encourage their distinct identities.
Any comments from commissioners or questions for staff?
I also wanted to recap briefly that, so in 2017 is when the UDC adopted the DDF as a supplemental guideline, so we've already been using it in review. You may remember in 2018 we brought through an update to the downtown ordinance sections that cover cottage, and in that update we added the DDF as adopted by reference, so that designers, property owners, developers can more quickly locate it as a resource. So we're asking for this body to make a recommendation to Planning Commission. Again, there were no changes, but part of what you're recommending is that there are no changes to Cottage District.
So it would be if we choose to recommend it to planning, and then when it go to council for final approval?
Yes.
I'm just a little confused. Is this not something that falls under the purview of DDRC?
Yes, both committees. I mean, DDRC has reviewed it.
Okay, so
The Urban Design Commission reviews cottage as per the downtown guidelines.
so within the scope of DDRC, we make a recommendation as it pertains to cottage?
No, this body reviews cottage cases exclusively.
Okay.
Cottage cases never go.
I got you.
Yes, but you are reviewing them using sections that are in the downtown part of the ordinance.
Unless there are no remaining questions for staff, I would entertain a motion to recommend to the Planning Commission, if anybody would like to make one.
I motion to recommend approval of an update to the Planning Commission.
Okay, I have a motion by Nguyen. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Guillory. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that has been recommended to the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Next item is the 2020 meeting schedule that is in your packet there. Are there any updates or changes to the schedule from staff?
No, we've just, gone through the calendar for 2020, and we've utilized the same protocols we have in the past, being that the deadlines are always on the fourth Tuesday, and the meeting dates are always on the fourth Wednesday, with, of course, the exceptions that come into play when we have holidays intervene. And that always takes place in November and December because our fourth meeting often will conflict with either Christmas and/or Thanksgiving holidays. So we try to move that meeting up to the third week so we can try and preserve some opportunity to get a quorum. And as a result of that, we've highlighted those dates and the deadlines in October and November and the meeting dates in November and December to adjust to accommodate those issues.
Right. Thank you. And staff is asking for a vote on this to approve. Is that correct?
You have to adopt the calendar so we can get it posted with the city clerk and so on and so forth.
So I would entertain a motion to approve the 2020 meeting schedule.
Make a motion to approve the proposed calendar of meeting dates for 2020.
We have a motion from Gilroy. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second from Nguyen. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that meeting schedule is approved. We now move on to communications. We have one item under here. Would any commissioner or member of the public like any discussion of this item? Hearing none, we'll move on to our next meeting, or our opportunity for comments from planning staff. Do we have any additional comments from planning staff? Any comments from commissioners? Our next meeting is scheduled for October 23rd, and with that, we will be adjourned.
And we do have several cases on that meeting.
So we will meet
We will
in
have
October.
we will have a meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. We're adjourned.
Yes. Michael Filbert? Yeah. That's T-H-I-L-B-R-I-C-K. Uh-huh. And that's 297-2110.
All right, Mike. Nice to meet you.
And you too.